things happening really makes like a interesting scene for me. And like I felt like Champaign, it just had that. It had a lot of different people doing different things, which made for some interesting shows and just a lot of weird bands, and it was cool.
This is Champaign is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champaign Showers podcast network. Welcome to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. Today, I have Tim Reynolds, and you may know Tim Reynolds from such bands as Horrible Things, Hospital Job, and his current project, Time Thieves. So Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to be listening to your song A Million Times off of the album Everybody Else. So without further ado, let's listen to the song. Welcome back. So, of course, my first and favorite question to always ask is, what came first? Was it the music or was it the lyrics?
You know, I think I came up with that like chorus first, like with the lyrics and the guitar part together. I think I came up with that riff and the lyrics to match it pretty quickly. And so I started the song off that way. And I usually like to start off songs with choruses. I think I find my best work starts off that way.
Interesting. So when you say chorus, I'm making a big leap here. I know I've said a million times that I'm fine is the chorus.
Yeah, that's what I would consider the chorus, I guess.
Excellent. No, I mean, I kind of clocked that as the chorus, so I'm pretty sure that had, I kind of felt already that was the spot that would repeat. However, it's funny is like when you have a chorus, you usually repeat it, and I'm curious how you used those parts later in the song, because I feel like on the outro part or whatever that is, you kind of return to some of those ideas that are going on in that chorus. How did it start coming together after the chorus was formed for you?
I don't know. I think like a lot of those Horrible Things songs were an exercise in like brevity, like how short can I make a song but still has a hook. I would like try and focus on like, I don't know, those like chord patterns and stuff, and try and maybe not repeat the part, but like bring it back. I really don't know how I came up with the other parts of the songs. 2 verses, a chorus, and then kind of revisit that riff at the end to kind of bring it back together, I don't know. I was like trying to focus on like making songs as short as possible without having to repeat too much. I don't know. That was just like my mission statement back then.
When you say back then, let's think about the fact that this song was written and recorded 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Yeah. Is this like the first 10-year-old song that you've covered on this podcast?
I think that there's some other ones. I would say probably Angie Heaton's was a 10-year-old song. It's a lot to think about, but yeah, we've had some older songs, but at the same time, I found that most people, when they want to talk about their favorite song, they usually mention the most recent song that they've written. I don't know. I guess I was always expecting that it would be something that someone like cherished in their heart, and it was something that they wrote and they're always proud of it. But I feel like there's always this sense of wanting to move on and find the next big thing and whatever you're most excited about then.
Yeah.
So we'll return to why you picked the song towards the end of this section, but I was kind of curious about, you mentioned that you had kind of the mission statement of making a song as short as possible, but I like to think about how this song feels like a social situation in some ways, right? Like sometimes you don't feel necessarily in place, you feel out of place, so you kind of want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. And I feel like this song kind of accomplishes that in some ways. I was just curious about, you started off with the chorus, but then when did the verses kind of come into being? And then when did you decide that this would have the theme that it does, kind of this separation from other people or even your own, how you fit within society?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this was like, I was writing that record and like this song was kind of later in the process of it. So I kind of already had that kind of theme going of like isolation and dealing with like, I don't know, addiction issues or something, or like feeling out of place. I kind of had this chorus I said a million times, I'm fine, but I lied. And so like, I don't know, just trying to expand on that idea, bringing back the idea of like, being alone or doing things alone kind of makes it different. It started out like one way and ends up another. Expanding on the idea of like isolation, and I think I was going through kind of like addiction issues at that point and kind of realizing mental health issues. And, I was just trying to expand on the idea of like covering up the fact that like, you tell everyone you're fine, but, maybe deep down you're not really. I don't know if that really answers your question, but.
No, well, I just find it interesting, these concepts of, you make this statement of, I know that I said a million times that I'm fine, but I lied constantly. When you were talking about that, were you talking about the lie of being fine or the lie of something else? And I'm sure that it was probably all wrapped up into one big thing, but I just was thinking about kind of the clarification on that.
That's like a good insight on it. I think it's like I lied about being fine, like people asking, or like your outward projection towards the world of being fine, but deep down I think you're dealing with some things,
I kind of want to geek out a little bit on the, I don't know, on the music theory of this. I was playing around with it. I noticed that it was in the key of E flat, but I was curious, were you playing like differently tuned? Were you tuned down and then you played it in E flat?
It was easier to sing a half step down. So I think the whole record is tuned a half step down. The vocal parts are high, and I think I was having problems like singing that high, so I just like tuned it all down.
Well, I was just curious. I didn't know, partially because we discussed this before, and the listeners won't hear this for the most part. I'm going to let a little bit of it come through, but you use the Cheers theme song at the end, and I noticed that, it stays in that kind of E flat key. I was curious if you had either tuned down, I didn't run it side by side, but if you had tuned down the Cheers theme, or it just ended up being that kind of perfect match.
Complete coincidence, actually. That was like all after the fact. I think I was watching a lot of Cheers, to be honest, and like I was like, I have to put this in.
And it's interesting to have the choice of using Cheers at the outro, which is, their theme song, or the intro, which is, taking place in a bar, and that Cheers is this place where everybody knows your name and you kind of connect with people and they're the same faces that you see over and over, and they deal with things because you deal with things because it's that close community. But I feel like that was that antithesis of this song too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I was curious about, did you write all of the parts for the band members, or do you just take your guitar part and the vocals and say, here, this is what we're doing, and then they write their own parts to fill in? How do you bring a song to the rest of the band?
Typically, I guess I would write a song, like a skeleton of a song, and bring it to the band to kind of expand on and put, their flavor on different parts. These songs in particular from that record, I recorded everything. All the instruments. Only because the band I had was we were demoing through songs, and the rhythm section, they both moved in different places that summer. And so it was like, I guess I'll just record these by myself. So I did passable drums and everything else.
I didn't realize that's how that came about for the album.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about some of the choices you made in the bass.
Okay.
There's some spots where the guitar is going, but at the same time, the bass is doing this kind of descending chromatics, and they always feel like they're happening about the same time as you're saying, like, now I'm stuck in the habit of misery. And then in that outro...
Yeah, it's like a descending part, yeah.
And it just kind of is this constant descending. It recurs over and over, just kind of as this, it feels kind of foreboding in a way, where it's just like things are just kind of trucking along, but at the same time, the bass is kind of giving this, foreshadowing is not the right word, but kind of a subtext to everything, I want to say, where it's almost like the thing that is telling the truth in the middle of the lie. Like everything else is kind of going along as it does, but the bass is saying like, no, things are not going well. Things are just kind of slowly slipping away. How did that kind of come about, that bass part?
Really wish I had a better thing to say about it, but I think it's just kind of following the guitar part, if I'm being totally honest. Because I feel like the guitar part's kind of doing the descending thing too, but there's just a lot of leads over it.
I don't know if I just missed that or I just got instantly keyed in on the bass line.
I like the way you put it though.
This is interesting. So let's talk a little bit about, I don't know if you want to call this the final verse or after the repeat of a million times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious on that final verse of the, I wish you'd all admit that you'd be better off if I didn't exist. I'm just curious, were you having those feelings at that time?
It's kind of a dramatic line, isn't it? No, I don't know. I think I was kind of being hyperbolic, but it still fits in. I think those thoughts kind of cross everyone's mind, whether it's irrational or not. And it kind of fit in with the theme of the song. I don't know.
I was just kind of thinking about, you mentioned that you were dealing with your own mental health issues as well as some addiction. A lot of people say that there's some healing properties of making music, but sometimes I know that in making music, it can make things feel worse. And I was just curious about your feelings during the process of making this piece.
Yeah, I don't know if it made me feel any better. It was just but it was sort of cathartic. I think I was just feeling really isolated. I don't know. I kind of used it as a diary, just a way to get things out, I guess.
I don't know if you could call this irony, but I find it interesting that in a song talking about doing it alone, you ended up recording all of the parts for the album by yourself, as yourself.
Yeah, no shit.
It ended up being a little more meta than you probably wanted it to be, but that's just what needed to happen in order to make this happen, right? To make the album come together. I'm curious about, you talk about wanting to get to the point quickly, in and out, but in the middle, there's that single bass line, and then the guitar comes back. I'm just curious about that idea of making kind of an interlude real quick.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to make the songs really short and to the point, but I also want to make it really dynamic. So I knew I wanted to have a bridge part that kind of slowed down a bit, kind of change up the tempo. I like songs that do that, and especially when it's in a short amount of time, it's kind of it's just a lot to take in, So I think that's just where it came from, trying to put in a more dynamic part to it, so it's not all just straight fast music,
I'm curious about how you think about the style of this piece and also the album as a whole. It's become really interesting in more of the, I don't know if you want to just say in the punk genre or the pop punk genre, or even within hardcore, that the overall idea of a song structure tends to kind of fall apart or it maybe makes reference to a chorus. Because I would think, like, if you talk about something being a chorus, that it's something that you come back to and repeat.
For sure.
Now, and I think you do that musically, you return to it musically, but you don't necessarily come back to it being this repeating line. Mm-hmm. How do you think about when you put together the song structure, and especially looking at how the lyrics were written out? Mm-hmm. I have to admit, it kind of lies about where the different sections are, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated by, there's kind of this deconstruction that's happening within those genres.
And in my case, like, yeah, I think I was just, at that time, I was really interested in writing pop punk, but like kind of deconstructing it a bit, or making it a little off kilter, just making something kind of different, maybe doing things that people didn't expect, you know, like not revisiting a chorus or like a hook, like bringing it once and then like not revisiting it again. Just, I don't know, doing off kilter things that made it stand out to me. I think I was exploring that kind of stuff with this album. Whereas like nowadays, I feel like I'm trying to get better at writing just like a normal song, you know, like I spent so much time not doing that like it's hard for me to do repeating parts and things like that.
I ended up listening a little bit to Time Thieves, which it is very pro forma for a song, right? Like, so you do have a verse, you have a chorus, you have a verse again, and you have a chorus, and then you have a bridge, and then you have like a chorus. Now, when you write with Time Thieves, is it more of a collaborative writing effort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the first batch of Time Thieves songs wasn't even written by me. I kind of just like put my backup vocals and stuff on it. But then a new batch, I've been writing the songs and collaborating with the band with the intent of like writing a more normal song, you know, like with multiple choruses and like normal parts. Whereas like Horrible Things, I was intentionally trying to write like an off-kilter song.
It seems like with Time Thieves, it's a little bit more synth-driven, maybe?
Yeah, and like I'm not the lead singer of that band either, so I try and write the songs like to be less like for me and for I know how he sings and what he wants, so like I try to write for him and then the other vocalists too. So it's like it's a different frame of mind for me for sure to write those kind of songs as opposed to Horrible Things or pop punk stuff.
Yeah. Well, so I was just going to mention now, of course, like my favorite part of the song, and
I like the kind of the pause and the slowdown that happens about the after constantly to the people around me, that bass and guitar riff exchange. And one of the things that I like musically, I don't know if my brain interprets it correctly, but there's something about when you played the bass line, you almost started assuming a certain chord because that's what you heard before with that same bass line. But then when you bring the guitar on top of it and you play the, I guess they're kind of the octaves, it sounds like. You did it. And what it does is it kind of recontextualizes what chords were happening. And I think it's this nice spot where the same thing is happening in some ways, but also there's a new context that's kind of floating in there.
Yeah.
And what it does is it makes you think differently about the chords that you've already heard, or like the tonality or the harmonies that you've already thought about with that bass line.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I don't know, I enjoy when songs do that, where maybe the same thing is happening, but something new happens that changes the way it sounds altogether. That's my favorite part in the song. So I'm curious, what's your favorite part in the song?
Yeah, I think that last like hook, the end part, a million times. I think just I like the hook. I like the chorus. Honestly, yeah.
Nice.
I remember playing that a lot before I had the whole song put together. It just came naturally. Like I don't know, the hook just kind of works to me.
Yeah.
The lyrics and guitar part fit together nicely.
Why did you choose this song to be the song you wanted to talk about today?
I think that song is probably the strongest song out of that off that album. And I wrote that album in Champaign. I think that was the last batch of songs I wrote while living in Champaign. So it seemed relevant to this podcast. Shout out to John Menchaca and Trevor Seal for playing those songs with me before they moved away. But like they definitely like had a piece of that, you know. So they like I definitely used some of the things that they wrote when I performed it later. So
Excellent.
Shout out to them.
Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening, located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Welcome back. So, Tim, what is your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue, past or present?
Good question. I don't think it's there anymore, but I remember I really liked Mike and Molly's a lot.
Mike and Molly's has such a weird contrast because one of the best venues is that beer garden outside, right? And then when winter rolls around, they used to have Mike and Molly's upstairs, and it'd be like this tiny little packed-in thing. They both had this really great feel about them. I can't really put my finger on it, other than obviously the beer garden outside. It was, you know, when the summer breeze would come like blowing in through there, it just had this great feel about it. And I don't know what it was about the upstairs, but you've gotten to play upstairs and downstairs, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. And like, I remember the upstairs more, I think, and just having to climb all those stairs with your amps and like, it was just like, it was a kind of a unique place. I liked it a lot. What's it now?
It's now Seven Saints, and sometimes they'll use the beer garden for performances and that kind of thing, but
Gotcha.
At this point they're mainly a restaurant and bar.
I also look back fondly on all those house shows in Urbana. If I could just put all those together as my favorite venue, but like some of those house shows are really memorable for me. Error House, JFK House, Dingbat Dungeon. Dang, I'm blanking. Those are good. Those are a good three, though, I think. There was an assortment of them in Urbana, I felt like. And, like, coming from Springfield, where there wasn't any house, literally zero house shows, that, like, it was like, whoa. It was really cool to be a part of.
I mean, a big part of that is just that it's a university town. And so you're going to have tons of students that are going to want to have DIY venues and a place to play and a place to, you know, gather and etc. I don't know. I think a lot of rented areas or rented houses just lend themselves to being DIY venues. I don't know what it is, but they just tend to have that. People
who are willing to have, like, you know, 50 people in their house at one time, you know? Yeah, those were really cool shows, I remember. In, like, meeting a lot of people. Yeah, good times.
Who were your favorite people back in the day to go and see? What bands would you see, or even solo artists would you enjoy seeing around town playing live?
I feel like we played with the Fresh Kills. I think they later changed their name to Mid-Stress. We played with them a lot. The Diamond Stretch, we played with them quite a few times. Trying to think if there was any other like pop punk bands.
What was a favorite show that you went and saw?
You know, actually a show that sticks out for me was probably like 2010 or something. I don't know. It was at Red Herring. The bassist of Horrible Things at the time and I booked it, and it was the Copyrights, which I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're a pop punk band from Carbondale. Them, and then we got Alleyway Sex, which was like a ska punk band from Champaign. The Diamond Stretch, which featured some people from Champaign, and then us. And like that was just like a lot of people showed up. Alleyway Sex, I think, was from Urbana, or like kind of stationed in Urbana, and the Diamond Stretch was from Champaign. So it was kind of like, I don't know, a mixture of the two worlds, plus this new university band, plus a band from Carbondale. I don't know, it was really cool. I like that show sticks out in my mind as like a very remarkable one.
Yeah, so was that upstairs in the chapel, or was that downstairs in Red Herring?
Downstairs, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Do they still have shows there?
some of the best shows that I've seen have been upstairs in the chapel. But then also there's something about the Red Herring downstairs in the basement where it's like DIY without it being DIY.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a warmth to that too. People are here because they want to hear good music, not because they want to go out drinking. It's about the music at that point. You know, there's just something nice about that too.
I'm also remembering Independent Media Center. That's a good venue too. I remember, I'm trying to think of some of the shows I saw there, but like, that was a cool venue also. All these venues are coming back to me now.
I moved to Champaign-Urbana in 99, but my awareness of local music and local bands, all of that really didn't come about until like 2007, 2008. And even then it was pretty small awareness, and then it just grew. But there's so many things that people will mention like in the early 2000s that I'm just like, oh wow, I wish I'd caught them before, when they were smaller, or like when, you know, before more people knew them, kind of thing.
I started going to school there in 2008. So yeah, that's like when I started seeing shows there too.
I'm kind of curious. So, you know, you mentioned you'd been in Springfield, you've played in Chicago, you've played in Champaign-Urbana. Like, what's the difference in the feels between those three, you know, areas, music scenes?
Let's see. I look back at like the shows in Springfield pretty fondly. There was like a really cool punk scene. There's a surprising amount of bands in Springfield, but there just wasn't a lot of places to play. I remember the DIY venue that started in high school for me, like mid 2000s, Black Sheep Cafe. That was really, it felt like that was the only place to play. Everybody came to those shows, but like, you know, I don't know, it just didn't feel like there was a ton going on. Definitely no house shows. But Champaign, it was just like, there were so many places to play. There was a lot of different kinds of people. Like, I felt like it was a talent jump, you know? Like, there was just like a lot of like really thoughtful people and a lot of interesting places to play. And then, of course, like Chicago is like that, is all of that together, I feel like, you know? Or house shows, a lot of places to play, and a lot of different people, you know?
Oh, so there's a pretty healthy house show scene in Chicago, or no?
For sure. I think I'm a little too old for it now, so I'm out of touch with it, but there definitely is a healthy house show scene in Chicago.
Yeah, I guess I haven't heard very many guests actually say something about Chicago house scene, so I that's kind of a surprise to me. Although it shouldn't be a surprise to me, but I guess I haven't pictured it. It always feels like if it's going to be Chicago, it's going to be these small bars, or it's going to be like these somewhat well-known, smaller venues in Chicago that are actually part of that music scene.
See, like that's where I orbit, I feel like, typically in Chicago. But yeah, there's definitely house shows happening.
With those three locations in context, like, what do you think makes a good music scene or a healthy music scene?
Just like, I mean, just like diversity, just like a lot of different people and like a lot of different ideas, like not even like just one genre, but just like a lot of different things happening really makes like a interesting scene for me. And like, I felt like Champaign, it just had that. It had a lot of different people doing different things, which made for some interesting shows and just a lot of weird bands, and it was cool.
When you were here in Champaign-Urbana, what do you think Champaign-Urbana could do better to make a better music scene?
I don't know. I always like, I mean, I don't know how you'd make it better, but like, I always just felt like I wanted more like punk happening there. You know, like I'm not involved in any of those other scenes, and I'm sure those scenes have lots of stuff going on, but like the punk scene always felt like there could have been more happening, or like more bands, or I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't privy to it. I don't know. But just like more punk, more hardcore. That's like what I'm looking for. So like to me, like a healthy scene has a lot of that, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I have to say, I feel like it really does come down to what the venues are interested in and what they promote, and, you know, whether they make space available for a punk scene. Because I do feel like we've got a really healthy amount of punk musicians or hardcore musicians, but not necessarily enough venues for them to play at. And I mean, I think that may not just be unique to Champaign-Urbana. I don't know if that's, I don't know very many bars that are interested in always having space available for hardcore or punk bands. It just...
But I always felt like, Champaign always had a lot of other like genres, like country and things going on, or like hip hop and stuff happening that was like pretty cool.
In Urbana, there's the Rose Bowl, which is doing all sorts of genres. They're not just country. And then the Gallery Art Bar does all sorts of genres as well, and then does visuals at the same time, which is really awesome. And then you've got Independent Media Center, and then you also have the C4A, which actually hosts often hardcore and like punk shows. And it's like during the day, it's just kids can come in and get lessons, but then at night it becomes this drug-free, alcohol-free venue where it's all ages, which honestly, I don't think I need to tell everybody, but I feel like I should, is that, if we want to inspire and bring up the next generation of musicians, these all ages venues are like so important.
Yeah.
To have people see, people that may, have feelings that some of these kids may not be able to express. And then they're like, wow, they're able to say this, and I'm able to connect with a person this way. And, I don't know. It seems like it gives them a good lesson of how do I express myself in a healthy way that helps other people sometimes. And then, I don't know. Anyway,
I
yeah,
could
for
just talk
sure.
about that forever.
I mean, that was huge for me, like having an all age venue to go to and like see people play guitar. Like I could do that. Like, that was like huge for me. And yeah, keep that going. Yeah. It's like super important to have those places, In Springfield, there was a place called Bread Stretchers that was like a sandwich shop. It was like a sandwich shop that had shows, and like everybody would be there. It was like the social like happening. Like they had all sorts of bands. Like, it was really cool. Like everybody from high school was there, it felt like. So it was just like what everybody did on the weekends. And then Black Sheep Cafe, everybody was there. It was really cool, and that like made me want to do it more and meet new people. And like, yeah, man, that was like super formative for me.
Champaign is also a band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246.
Welcome back. So, Tim, what is your favorite non-musical thing or things?
Good question. Well, right now, last few years, I've just been painting. I'm doing a lot of like abstract painting, and I think that's my favorite thing right now. I'm just kind of exploring my style and kind of just diving deeper into it, and it's kind of taking on a life of its own. So like that's my favorite thing right now.
Did you study art at all, or is this just something that you've picked up?
Yeah, I went to school for graphic design. And like I'm a graphic designer by trade, I guess. But surprisingly, I never painted until the pandemic. Someone asked me to do a painting for him, and I was like, okay, well, sure, why not? And I actually like really enjoyed it and kept doing it. And now I'm like, probably 50 or 60 paintings in. It's like a whole new avenue of like expression for me.
So I'm curious, you said abstract. Are you large canvas? Are you small canvas?
I'll do it all. I want to go bigger. I want to go bigger though. Yeah. I want to do a mural or something. Yeah. I have like a style I've been developing, and like, I don't know. I want my art to like look like it's me,
So oil, acrylic,
yeah.
That's a very popular answer, is acrylic, but kind of agree, because you don't have to wait for it to dry forever, and cleaning brushes is simple.
Oil is too complicated for me. I don't. Maybe I'll get there one day.
When you actually have to deal with an object or deal with materials. In some ways, you're racing against time to get something down, or you're dealing with the viscosity of the material as you're trying to paint it, and it either it blends well or it doesn't blend well, or you want brush marks or brush strokes, or you want certain textures. To me, it's also it's so very like visceral, but there's something about that physicality of like interacting with objects.
Oh, totally.
I don't know.
Yeah. I like using my hands. Like, it just feels good it just feels really good. And I spend all my day on the computer. So like, I want to like work on art that's like not on a screen, you know?
There's a lot of like discovery that people made during the pandemic, right? Hopefully.
But yeah, I really did start doing it during the pandemic, you know? Yeah, it's great.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being on the show and talking about your song a million times. And, you know, the Champaign-Urbana music scene, as well as the Springfield and Chicago scene. And then, of course, your favorite non-musical thing. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Tim Reynolds reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live.
That's a wrap.
Champaign is also a band.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Studio South Eager on the inside.